fun piece of it. But I'm happy to start it off. And for those of you on the phone, this is Lauren Chisholm. I'm the section manager for the Injury and Violence Prevention Program as of March 1st. So let's see. So the overdose data action funding opportunity is
The presenter has muted the audience. You've been muted.
Prevention section. And those of you who may be familiar with our current funding structure for opioid prevention within public health, we currently receive roughly $2.4 million a year for under the auspices of a grant called Prevention for States, Prescription Drug Overdose. And that's been a 4-year grant. It started about $800,000 a year and ramped up continuously over the last few years as funding increased at the federal level. And that grant is actually ending at the end of August of this year. And so there's a data action funding opportunity is continuing that funding opportunity, as well as braiding funding with a couple of other data sort of opioid surveillance related funding opportunities, one of which has, I guess actually both of them have already been out there, but we haven't had in Oregon. State of Oregon has not been funded under those opportunities. So this is it's a kind of an enhanced and braided opportunity. So it will be starting September 1st, and it's actually a 3-year cycle. I was in D.C. last week at a conference where Grant Baldwin, who's the head of the injury branch at CDC, was speaking about this opportunity. And somebody asked him, why are you only doing this for 3 years? Do you have a commitment to this? And he said, yes, we do. We just know that the crisis is changing so quickly. They want to be able to fund it in smaller increments so that we can have a little bit more flexibility and a little more nimbleness in how we're approaching, so we don't get locked into requirements that may be not sort of timely. So this is with our funding level. The states have an opportunity to request for funding within a certain window, and we're at the top of our window is a little over $3 million a year. So this is an expansion, or will be an expansion. At this point, I was just last week at Ways and Means. We got approval from the legislature to apply, which is always a nice thing. And this is it's really blending in two pieces. There's a big surveillance portion of this, which will enable us to get really kind of soup up our ability to get real-time data through the Essence syndromic surveillance system that currently we get emergency room data, and we can track anything from measles outbreaks to now opioid overdoses or overdoses in general. So there's a big chunk of funding for that. There's also funding to implement a opioid and overdose death circumstance module within our National Violent Death Reporting System, which our section also coordinates. There's a significant prevention piece of this too, and I won't necessarily go into that. You can see on the right-hand side, there's work for state and local integration and linkages to care and health system support. We're also going to be applying for some funding related to communications and public safety partnership, but you'll probably notice there's a PDMP portion of this as well. And the two pieces of this are to enhance PDMP usability and then also to increase interstate data sharing. And so, of course, those are initiatives we're already involved with, and many states are not quite where we are with either of those. So, Josh, do you want to talk about some of the specifics of how this will work for PDMP?
Sure.
It's very integrated with the rest of the work that we're doing.
Right. There's two kind of different funding buckets within PDMP. The first is kind of enhance and maximize the PDMP. So there are certain things that either users have asked us for, or we think would be useful to put into the PDMP, or to just do things like increase or maintain the universal mandate. So continue doing a lot of the kind of QA to make sure that everyone is actually registering and to promote universal use. There's also some system customizations that would make our lives easier and help out some of our users. So things like a medical director summary report. Right now, a medical director can go in and look at all the prescriptions given by people he supervises, but that's sometimes not exactly the information they're looking for.
And they have to pull it one provider at a time,
Right.
which they'd like to have a bulk report.
So if we could build a system customization that would, create a summary report for all the people the medical director supervised, that would be something useful. And if we're allowed to do peer comparisons by this legislation, there's some things that we would like to be able to do with that. So if we could use the subcommittee, which previously has sent letters, if we could use them to provide targeted academic detailing or a deep prescribing clinic, that type of thing, that'd be something we'd like to write into this grant. The second bucket is about it's all about interstate data sharing and intrastate data sharing. So using PDMP to connect to other states' PDMPs, or to do the integrations into EHRs to support that work. The interstate data sharing, this grant does require us to connect to the RX Check Hub. Right now, we're connected through our vendor's PMPI hub, and there is this other hub that we could connect to that we're going to as part of this grant.
Wow.
What does that particular connection actually entail? I mean, is data going to be shared with the exchange, or?
We'd only share with other states if we have an MOU with that other state. And of course, I would prioritize our neighboring states. There isn't very much return on our investment to connect to states that are not neighboring, just because the amount of data that is actually returned is very, very small. There's not very many Josh Van Otterloos living in Maryland. So if they query our system, nothing's going to come back. It's just a really inefficient use of resources.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that MOU was executed before anybody got to see the data.
Absolutely. The same security and privacy precautions apply whether it's an in-state query or an out-of-state query.
Okay. Along those lines, while we're on the topic, Washington State did just join and execute an MOU with the National Associations of Boards of Pharmacy, which will allow them to utilize a hub that we are also utilizing. So long and short of it is, as soon as they sign our MOU, we'll finally have data with Washington. It's been a long path.
That would be important.
Yeah, it really has. It's been a labor of love for a long time trying to get that to happen. Right now, it's going to be only through the web portal. So it'll be when you log in, you'll see the states we're sharing with at the bottom, and you can select Washington, Corey. But we're still working towards getting it to where it'll also be included in our integrated use as well. That's the next push. Anybody have any questions or comments?
The presenter has allowed participants to unmute themselves. You can now unmute yourself by pressing *6.
Okay, so this is actually a fairly easy one because, like we said earlier, we haven't met since the last time this group met. We made the decision to not meet again until July. We're going to let the letters run on autopilot, which is to say we'll send them out once per quarter, with there saying that no prescriber will get a letter 2 quarters in a row. So if you get a letter, you're exempt from the next round. So we sent out almost 300 letters based on Q4 data in Q1. We just wrapped up Q1 2019. So in the next month or so, we'll start getting serious about sending the next batch of letters. The subcommittee did include the provision to exclude palliative care providers. We do have specialty now, so what we found looking at specialty in there, it actually had very little impact, but we're going to keep drilling down to make sure we're taking into account subspecialties, anything we can to make sure we're not going to be pestering the wrong people. One of the big goals of the subcommittee is to not infringe in any way on appropriate end-of-life care. That's not a goal at all. And so this subcommittee spent a lot of time discussing and focusing on ways to prevent this letter being misinterpreted as punitive towards anyone who is providing cancer care, end-of-life care, palliative, appropriate pain management. You have a question?
Yeah. Is it included in the letter to, if you feel like you received this in error, to change your subspecialty?
What we included new on this letter was it's the same sense of saying, subcommittee in no way wants to interfere with valuable end-of-life care. If you belong to, I think it says palliative care, maybe cancer care, please log into your PDP profile to ensure that your specialty is accurately captured. So that was in this last round. And we do know that there are going to be some people who, it's a self-entered field, and we populate the rest of it from the licensing board data. So there's going to be some people who are not accurately depicted. That's just how it's going to be.
The ones that we did enter ourselves based on board data were people that had accounts that migrated over from the system. Anybody that's registered since October 22nd of 2017 has entered it themselves.
And specialty is going to be an area of continuous improvement, especially if we start doing peer-to-peer comparisons. Capturing specialty and subspecialty so you can actually do accurate comparisons is going to be much more important. And
that's why that was my question: is if your subspecialty is different and you put in your subspecialty, if you're comparing it to like peers, would it change how you send out letters? Is basically the question. And if it does, then.
So at this point, we haven't altered any letters based on who's getting it in terms of specialty. We send out a unique version of the letter based on what criteria they met, and if they met multiple criteria. If you're prescribing a lot to opioid-naive patients for someone who's prescribing a ton of high MED, or frequently prescribes to people who are going to multiple clinics, potential. If you have 4 more providers, 4 more pharmacies, it varies. And so at this point, we haven't really changed who's getting it, just why they're getting it. But especially after legislative session, our next meeting's in July. It'll be at the end of legislative session. It'll be the prime time for us to really talk about, based on whatever passes, how we might do some changes. Yeah, they might be drastic changes depending on what legislation passes. Because right now the subcommittee is very limited to providing education and resources to those who they identify as potentially being risky prescribers. So, and I believe that is it. Yeah. So next letters will go out in the next probably next month and a half.
Okay. Any questions or comments? Thank you, Drew. New business. I added this one because there was a concern that was raised to me, and I fully embrace the concern. It was not out of, we believe OHA is not paying, is basically slipping and sliding on privacy and security, but it's the question about what are the checks and balances within the agency. I specifically asked about when the last time, how often are vendors vetted, and I'm thinking of APRIS because from a information security perspective, that really should happen when you've got critical vendors like that. That should happen on an annual basis, and I know that OHA doesn't necessarily have the staff for that. What I also wanted to bring up is when we moved to APRIS and we were starting the Eddy project, one of the things that I did was I reviewed for those of you that don't know what a SOC 2 audit is, it's the American CPA Association. It's called the SSAE 18. It used to be the 16. Ours last year was the 16. Now it's the 18. And the SOC 2 is a service organization criteria audit, and it can focus on different areas. But I looked at their what's called the SOC 2 audit, which identifies potential issues that they have with information security. And there were some. They weren't significant, or they weren't, the showstoppers there. But I'd recommended to the agency that they go back when the next SOC 2 report is available from these vendors, is to take a look at it and say, did you do something about those things that were exceptions in the last report? And They do it when the vendors do, like during the procurement process, the RFP process. They do it if there's an incident, a security incident, and then they do it if the appropriate person asks for it. I don't know who the appropriate person is, but it's just wanting to make sure that there is a periodic look to see how secure is the data. Are the vendors meeting their requirements? Do we have some issues? And part of this popped up because there was an issue, or it turned out not to be an issue, but it looked like there was an issue when the PDMP was merged with Epic for, I think it was Salem Health, that it appeared that people that weren't authorized to get access to that data were able to. How it turned out it was a process issue. It wasn't a real issue, but that raises the concern of, okay, who's checking these things? So I just wanted to bring that to the group as far as a discussion item.
And so, based on you bringing this to us, we reached out to our security and privacy office. As you said, they don't have a robust staff right now. They're actually restaffing the whole office, and so it was difficult for us to really do a lot of legwork to figure out OHA's policies and how they would view adding, like you said, a routine annual review of critical systems.
Sorry. No, you keep going. I'm just thinking, and I think with facial expression.
Because, yeah, right now, as Chris said, that there are clear points when they do security reviews, and one of them is not a periodic annual, which for critical systems sounds like it would likely be appropriate. We won't really be able to have that conversation with our security officers until they're restaffed, and they have a director that is open to having that conversation and changing policy. I think it's valid. I mean, obviously, for a system like ours, security and privacy is like a central concern. And thanks to the way our contract is, we do periodic reviews, and we're in the midst of renewing our contract. So ISPO, the Internet Security Office, or Information Security Office, will be doing a review this year of our program. But after that, it's a 3-year contract extension. It would be likely inappropriate to wait till the end of the next 3-year cycle to evaluate again.
Being in, healthcare, we have to evaluate all of our systems at least annually for the reason that, we're dealing with patients' confidential information. So the doing annual makes sense to me, but I wonder if it's happening through, OHA more on a 3-year basis, it sounds like. The question is, is there a way that, can we figure out what they're doing on their own to query their systems to make sure that their systems are secure? Does that have to be an external review, or can it be an internal review?
It doesn't have to be external.
So because I feel like they have to be concerned about security as well.
They do.
That's their...
and Chris had to sign an NDA in order to get access to the reports at our security office. And I don't think it would necessarily be appropriate for program level staff to be doing that. It's not our area. We're not technical experts. There could be a conversation about, the Vice Commission does have one seat reserved for a technology expert that Chris fills. I don't know if that is really a program level decision on to decide who is appropriate to be doing annual reviews, but
and my concern is not who's the appropriate person to do it, because for the most part, I believe the appropriate person is the department, is OHA, and it's privacy security shop. But mine is more, it's not happening.
I mean, I just think from a what could be done sooner than later approach, the question is more, can we get information from APRIS about what they're doing internally to keep data secure? Because how often are they keeping up with it? Because if that's something that we can say, yes, this is being done, on an annual or a quarterly basis by them, then is it as important that that OHA also takes it upon themselves to do that annually?
Being in the information security space is sort of the old military term, trust yet verify. is, I mean, if APRIS could supply once again the SOC 2 Type 2 report, I'm always happy to sign an NDA. I mean, that would be a good place to start, and I would think that would be due diligence on the part of the department to also look at those reports rather than just saying, "Hey, I'm doing a good job over here."
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you can view that report, but can they do a summary of that report so that somebody else can view that report and know what the outcome was? Because I don't even know what you're talking about. Yeah. I understand like privacy and security globally, but not.
And that's something that, I mean, if the department feels it's appropriate, I would be more than happy to look at the report and provide a layperson's response back as far as this is what it says. Because what I look for is I don't necessarily look for, I know what they're supposed to do. I look for is the exceptions in the report or the things that they're not doing according to standards. And that's what I did last time around. And I think that's more a department decision than mine.
I think this conversation will unfortunately have to be on hold until we have a security director and support staff. They just have significant turnover in their office.
Yeah, I understand that. I still keep in touch with one of your retired CISOs. He's hanging, actually a couple of them. One is hanging out in Florida and the other one's in Arizona.
That's a very relevant, I mean, obviously that's a big portion of what you guys are trying to do is keep information secure. So if there's a concern about security.
To be clear, we don't have any reason to be worried. Our vendor has done a good job. We haven't had incidents. The information that we have vetted has been largely good. Like Chris pointed out, there's been some issues that weren't worth stopping the train, but were worth making sure they got addressed down the road. But this conversation isn't started because the state of privacy and security is bad. It's more we do need to do our due diligence and trust but verify.
Yeah, we can loop back on this when they're in a better position to respond. So,
Which, I mean, hopefully soon. I'm told that they're currently interviewing, so that can mean anything for the state, but hopefully that means it's soon. Yeah.
Government soon is always an amazing thing.
And Chris, a question for you, sort of generally speaking in the industry, is there a standard for an entity like APRIS to be required to have a third-party review on a regular basis?
There is not a
general standard.
There's no written standard that says you have to do it. It's just an industry practice of going through like a SOC 2 audit. There are other different types of audits that can look at information security, but there's no. I mean, I'll use HIPAA as an example. I was in an audience and somebody asked OCR if they were ever going to go with a defined certification body, and the answer was a very emphatic no. So it's just you need to adhere to these things. How you assess whether you are or not, you figure it out.
Good to know.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, everybody. And do we have any open issues? Seeing none, we will move on to public comments.
I believe we have two public represented on the phone lines. Stephen, would you like to provide comment?
There he is. Steve, are you still on? Oh, yeah. We were a little bit fast.
I wonder if he just kind of walked away until later.
We can get the other person on.
Yeah.
Do you have any comment?
I don't. Thanks for asking, though.
The presenter has muted the audience. The presenter has allowed participants to unmute themselves. You can now unmute yourself by pressing *6.
Can you hear me? I can hear you. We can all hear you. Uh-oh.
For a second. Yeah, cut out again.
You cut out again, Stephen.
working.
And if you're on the phone and you have it muted on your end, you can unmute your own phone.
I do think you need to hit *6, so that's another tip.
But we're waiting for them to come on. The next meeting is July 19th, right here, the same place, same time. Do any of the members have any wrap-up comments while we're waiting for folks on the line? Mike, you've been pretty quiet.
I know. Just one thought. I thought our discussion about the private security audit actually was related to our discussion about legislative input. In that, again, I don't think it's a train stopper, but I do think the advisory commission's responsibility is to say, despite staffing problems, which we all understand, but I think it is our role to say things like, we are not satisfied with the current level of documentation of security and privacy audit by the current vendor, completely understanding limitations and, reasons and all that kind of stuff. Just like I think, to me, it kind of sounded like the same deal. It's like we speak, it doesn't seem like anybody's listening. So, it's like who, so I just found a common thread there to say, it's not like it's, we're going to all get excited because of all the huge privacy concerns, but I do think it's our role to say, every once in a while it's not good enough.
Yeah,
so
I agree with you, Mike.
So our advice to OHA is that's not good enough. So do better. We're not in a position to do better. We're not in a position to give you funds to do better. All that kind of stuff. But I think it is our job to say that does not really meet, I think, what the people of Oregon are thinking is happening about their privacy, and that kind of echoed to me the same general idea about we're theoretically a key stakeholder advisory expert panel, and it seems like our opinion about various legislative concepts outside the political arena. So I totally get. We want to speak with one voice, and we don't want to have a bunch of different opinions out there. It's very understandable. I have no problem with that. But the advisory commission still has a responsibility to say things about the PDMP and sort of be listened to as an advisory commission. So that's a member wrap up, I guess. I don't know. I don't know, but anyway, I have a common thread there.
I think those are good points, Mike. But I do think it is our duty to raise those issues, and maybe the solution is a ways down the road, but I think we do have an obligation to raise those. Anybody else have any member wrap up?
I do have one item we overlooked. Okay. One of the roles of the advisory commission is to review the annual report by the program, and Peter has nearly completed that, and it will definitely be complete prior to the next meeting. And so I think you can all expect to see that in the near future. I guess an FYI on the annual report being forthcoming.
Yeah, and I can just speak very briefly to process on that. We have our initial draft, and Dr. Hedberg and I are going to take a look at it, and then it will go through a publications process, which hopefully will not take terribly long. But we'll make sure and get that out to you as soon as we can. And so just wanted to let you know that it is in process.
Great. Do we have our public back on the phone? Stephen?
You are no longer muted.
Yeah.
I had a quick question. This is Amara. You can hear me? Oh, I was just wondering, I know this might be a little outside this this commission, but the recent announcement by Robert R. Redfield, MD, Director of the CDC, that says the guideline does not endorse mandated or abrupt dose reduction or discontinuation, as these actions can result in patient harms. I'm just wondering if, the commission or committee are aware of that recent news from the CDC.
Doesn't look like anybody is, so I think that's good that you brought it to our attention.
Okay, great.
I was aware of it.
Oh, you were aware of it? Okay.
Yep.
Good, Mike. Is that something that we need to discuss, Mike?
I think we would need some background.
Okay.
Because essentially it's there is some literature that is being presented that is analyzing the negative effects of opioid discontinuation and dose reduction in various patient populations. So in other words, there's sort of we're very concerned, and rightly so, about the opiate epidemic, but there are some people that are being harmed by our efforts to limit their opioid use in a protocol manner. And of course, CDC guidelines spring to mind because they have MEDs and they make recommendations, around 50, 120. They have some very specific, guidelines or thresholds. And so there's just some gathering data that suggests that perhaps it's not quite as clear cut as that. And
Right.
I think the CDC director has then reacted by saying, well, now wait a minute, they're guidelines. We're not pretending if society is not allowing for some variation around patient-specific variables, that's not right either. I mean, the data about what a threshold of risk for an MED is good data and strong data, but it's not the same as individual judgment by a clinician. So I think that, in my view, that's basically what he said was, well, we have a guideline, but it's not scripture. It's a guideline.
Okay. Yeah, and that's when there's more out about it. I think that would be something that we would be of interest to put on an agenda, maybe the next go round.
One thing I'd like to clarify, this is Laura for the folks on the phone. The conversation about the particularly the tapering recommendations and guidelines is outside the scope of the prescription drug monitoring program and because who we are and how we do business. But I do want to encourage the members of the public who are on the phone today to get in touch with them. Our program can get you in touch with the process that's happening now. Dr. Hedberg, who was with us earlier in the meeting, is co-chairing a tapering guidelines task force that has convened a number of experts, including members of the public and patient advocates. And that group I believe they've met twice, and they're going to be meeting 3 more times. We can, if you're not able to find information about those, they are public meetings, and there's
actually,
for comment at those meetings as well.
We had a lot of people apply for that, and actually there aren't any public members that were accepted, unfortunately. We did want to be involved in that task force, but just wanted to throw that in there. We attempted to be involved.
And maybe I misspoke. I know that there are patient advocates that are part of that. But anyway, I wanted to make sure you were aware of that, because I think that's the place if you have concerns, particularly related to the guidelines and the guideline development process and the OHP policy. That's the group that has traction in that area.
and Health Evidence Review Commission as well.
Exactly.
And those meetings, in fact, are public and are advertised.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're aware of that. Thank you. Yep. Mm-hmm.
They're not a member. They're not publicly formed boards, but they are absolutely open to public comment and presentation and the like.
Yeah, we're very involved with those. Thank you.
And I think that's one of those where, and I appreciate the clarification. I think this is more for our, it's more for our edification, more of an informational item, but that is really outside of the purview of the PDMP.
Yeah, we collect the data that helps to identify where, what the prescribing trends are.
Yeah.
But we are not a group that sets any sort of policy related to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Any other input from those on the phone? Well, then
I'm good.
Okay. I would say the meeting is adjourned. Short and sweet. Give you back some of your afternoon.
Like that.
Thank you.
Sure thing.